Okay, hello. We are Group 8, and we are going to be presenting on the Australian Black Saturday bushfires. My name is Erin.
My name is Chloe.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Olivia.
Okay, so now just a little bit about the Black Saturday bushfires. They were wildfires that occurred in the Australian state of Victoria, and the fires burned throughout February and March of 2009. This was the worst wildfire in modern Australia, and it burned and destroyed more than 1 million acres, and it killed 173 people. The bushfires started on February 7th, and then they were officially put out on March 14th, which is over a month later. Okay, so first, we will discuss the ecosystem where the Black Saturday fires occurred. Again, they occurred in the southeastern Australian state of Victoria, and then you can see that state shown on the left map in purple. And in the map on the right, you can see where all the bushfires of the Black Saturday occurred in Victoria in red. And then this state has a pretty moderate climate, but it is warm, dry, and windy in the summer. And that continues to become more extreme as global climate change increases. Also, Australia is in the southern hemisphere, so the seasons are switched. And February, the month where the fires started, is the warmest month for the state. Then in this map here, you can see the bioregions where the fires took place, and they consist of dense dry forests and grasslands. And the areas were also full of eucalyptus trees, which have a really high oil content and they're very flammable. Okay, so there were over 400 bushfires that are all categorized as the Black Saturday fires. So they weren't all caused by the same thing. And because there are so many, it's hard and impossible to track down the origin of every fire. So it's not known, but in general, the fires were caused by either faulty or collapsed power lines, arson, or lightning strikes.
Okay, so during these fires, there's a lot of agencies that responded. So in Australia, there was the Australian Defence Force, the Metropolitan Fire Brigade, the National Parks and Wildlife, CFA Fire Authority, and then DSE Fire Authority. So CFA is the County Fire Authority, which is for private properties, and the DSE is the Department of Sustainability and Environment, which is public land. So they work together to fight fires with like majority of firefighters belonging to them. The Victorian Government Department of Human Services and Red Cross were the aid. So they were like health services providing in areas where the hospitals were like overrun and stuff like that. There was extras, which was amateur radio, and then the St. John ambulance. So the radio acted as an emergency response and provided frequencies for other agencies that were coming from out of state and like out from different areas. Help around the world. So Bulgaria, Canada, China, Cyprus, East Timor, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Iran, Israel, Japan, Lithuania, New Zealand, Norway, New Guinea, Portugal, Russia, Singapore, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, the Vatican City, Brazil, Cuba, Ireland, Nauru, Solomon Islands, South Africa, Sweden, Ukraine, Uganda, and Andorra were all responded very, very quickly when the fires started. The ones in red are the ones that actually sent help. All the others are ones that sent notes, maybe some money, different things like that, basically like their condolences. Starting off Canada, they sent 9 wildlife specialists and like teams. Indonesia sent a police forensic team and which helped identify the bushfire victims. They also contributed $1 million to the reconstruction of schools. New Zealand sent out a whole bunch of helicopters, and they sent out like a bunch of specialists, which also helped identify victims. They sent out also 100 firefighters, and then they donated $500,000 to the victims. New Guinea sent $2 million to aid, and then also for disaster victims as well. And then the United States sent more than 30 teams from the U.S. Department of Interior and then the Forestry Service Wildlife Service. And then they offered several teams of aviation managers and like planning section chiefs for the firefighting chiefs and stuff like that, and then emergency land rehabilitation specialists. And then there was a lot of people that were there that donated money to help build back communities. And so these communities, it was like things like the, I just lost my slide, guys. I don't know where to go. A lot of people just helped, okay, here it is. Sorry. A lot of people donated money. These are places like the Victorian government. The federal government offered $10 million. Salvation Army raised 17.5. Places like Kmart, V8 Supercars, Nine Network, Australian, the Football League, Coles, Woodworth Limited, NAB Cup, etc. So a lot of places and businesses from Australia. And then next slide. So with the disaster factors, there was a lot, just like Erin had talked about, summers are super hot. So there was a lot that like bushfires were very common during summer climate. So the disaster factors that caused it to be a lot worse were the heat wave, the drought, which was no rain, and then the wind. So during the heat wave, temperatures reached 115 degrees. There was a record low of rain that year. So if you see in the picture of blue and red down on the bottom, it shows where Victoria is, and that's the lowest on record. So the grounds were super dry and flammable. And then the wind reached a record high of 62 miles per hour.
So the devastating wildfires had a lasting impact on the community of Victoria. There were a total of 3,500 buildings that were lost in the fires, and of those, 2,029 were homes. Displacing families had an emotional and psychological effect and caused an immense amount of trauma on the people. Many people experienced a decrease in mental health after the event. People also had to live with diseases that were a result of breathing in the smoke. Due to many businesses burning down, people were near the Great Dividing Range and threatened the water supply of Victoria's most popular city, Melbourne. The population is around 5 million, so without the water, this would have been disastrous. Next slide. There was also a huge loss of human life. 173 people died, with an additional 414 people being injured. And not only was human life lost, but wildlife and domesticated animals also died. It was estimated that 1 million animals had died in the bushfires. The cost of damages from these bushfires was $4.4 billion. This money includes the cost of damage to infrastructure, property, and agricultural assets, as well as the costs associated with emergency response, recovery efforts, and loss of productivity. The fires had a long-term economic consequence, impacting industries such as tourism, agriculture, and forestry. Insurance claims were also amounted to billions of dollars, which added to the overall cost.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss some of the policies that were changed. Obviously, there were a lot of issues with the policies that were in place that didn't allow them to respond effectively to this fire. The first was the Royal Commission They commissioned/investigated into the fires, which led to 67 action steps and government-based recommendations. So after the devastation of Black Saturday, excuse me, it was clear that there needed to be changes made to the policy. The commission investigated all aspects of the government's bushfire strategy and ended up coming up with 67 recommendations that the Victorian government revise its advice around preparation for bushfires, along with its bushfire education policies, and that it would modify building codes, including banning the construction of homes in high risk areas. Basically, what this was doing is it was preventing the potential of these fires happening in the future. So that's what the policy was aiming to do. Is it was like, how can we possibly make sure that this doesn't happen again? In modifying these codes and increasing measures to ensure that a fire capacity did not rage again, the bushfires interim report, which is known as the VBRC, it arose. This report stated clearly that the fire was a wicked problem. Basically, what that meant is that the range of its destruction spanned beyond a single department. So, for example, it spanned into the forestry and wildlife, but also into the urban planning side of things, because it impacted so many things so greatly. So basically, what it said is that the issue needed to be addressed across the departments. The scope of this problem in deciding how best to take action for the future from a policy perspective led to many disagreements about how it should be solved. Basically, because there were many departments, there were many opinions, which led to convoluted interests being addressed instead of the root of the problem being addressed, being the preventative action for the future. Additionally, there was the development of the bushfire safety system by the County Fire Authority of Victoria. Basically, what this did, this bushfire safety system was taking all of those ideas that I just mentioned, those 67 action steps, and formatting it into a legitimate policy that was implemented so that people didn't have to deal with these fires. They had action steps so that they could deal with these fires in the future if they did arise, because, with increasing climate and things like that, in that context, it was pretty clear that it was going to continue to happen, but there was the opportunity to make it less severe and less destructive. Additionally, another component of the policy was the development of a 6-tier rating system of scale of risk, which they called the fire danger rating, or the FDR. In September or October of 2019, it was announced that this new fire hazard system would replace the previous one. This system involved those 6-tier scale to indicate things such as level of risk and activity of the fire. It ended up becoming a standard that was subsequently adopted by all Australian states in the late 2009s. Every day during fire season, the Bureau of Meteorology would forecast an outlook of the fire danger index, and from there they would use that fire danger rating scale to determine how high a risk of fires were. Additionally, they implemented community preparedness policies, which is what I'm going to mention on the next slide, is that you can, yeah, perfect. Is that whatever preventative measures could have decreased the severity of Black Saturday, community preparedness was the number one thing that was cited. People were not prepared because, as people, we innately believe that it's not going to happen to us because it's not around us. So basically, they said that was the number one thing that could have gone better, because some of the things that didn't happen was that there were not community warnings or community information that was sent out. So basically, they decided that they needed to have better ideas of when and how warnings were received by those people in those high-risk areas. Additionally, vegetation management was something that was cited that could have helped with community preparedness. Basically talking about how you can create and maintain a defendable space around your home. Additionally, they implemented building codes. They need to construct buildings that will withstand the passage of fire and severe ember attack. And they need to have planning laws, basically, of where people are allowed to build, and have more information about refugees and evacuation in the future. They recognized that an improved approach was basically required to address these issues. And in the months following Black Saturday, they developed a bushfire safety system based on the system's theory, designed to combat the impacts of bushfire in Victoria, and acknowledge that it was an issue, and that if communities were not prepared, they might run into the same severity of the issue that would lead to loss of life, which obviously nobody wanted. So community preparedness was cited as the best way they could have decrease the severity of Black Saturday. Thank you.